Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everything is working. Late again this week. What's happening to me? Um, Welcome to the live stream. If you haven't attended these before, I run them normally every Friday. And it's a quick catch up with what's going on in markets and where the opportunities might be over the next week or so. Is that actually working? Oh, it is working. It's just there's a bit of a lag with YouTube sending out the thing. Anyway, we've had the PCE, the Personal Consumer Expenditure data in the last hour, which is the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. Clearly a bit of volatility off that, not much. I mean, this is the NASDAQ. So before it all happened, the NASDAQ was trading around 24.4. We've been up above 24.5 and we've been back below 24.4 and we're here. So as is often the case on these sort of big announcements, a bit of a, what I always think is a bit of a headless chicken thing by markets. Not sure if it's good, not sure if it's bad. So I always like to wait until things calm down. I haven't done many trades this week. I bought the NASDAQ the other day on Wednesday and it promptly fell off a cliff since then. So I'm in the NASDAQ trade about 80 points higher than where it is now. Narrowly avoided getting stopped out by about 20 points yesterday. So I'm in that trade, but you know, looking at the trend over the last couple of days, sorry, I'd probably have to be a seller if I was doing a trade now. I'm sticking with my long to see what happens. But you know, since that all-time high, we'll look at this in a bit more depth in a second. You know, the market has been selling off. So let's see. Let's see what happens the rest of today. The other trade I've got is the FTSE. That has come good. I've been in that trade for just over a week. I bought at 92.30 and it keeps flipping around from being up 40, minus 40, flip-flop, flip-flop. It has had a move today, so I'm up about 50 points on that. Let's see. Let's see what happens the rest of the day and going into next week. And also gilts. I've been short gilts, UK gilts, since about here. So nearly, 2 weeks, I think. Not far off 2 weeks I've been short gilts. And it did start breaking down just at the end of last week. So I'm still short gilts. But the only trade I've done this week so far is the NASDAQ. And I don't think I'll be doing one today. Anyway, but let's have a look. Let's get into these markets and see what's going on. As usual, let's do a risk warning. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay, that's it. I run a WhatsApp group. We'll talk more about that a bit further in. If we have a look at what's on the economic calendar for next week, I mean, it's not been that dramatic a week this week, I don't think. We had that PCE data out today. Looking at next week, what do we have that might be important? There's lots on Monday, but nothing that looks that important. Tuesday, UK GDP on Tuesday. How well or not is the UK economy doing? That could be interesting. Some German CPI data on Tuesday. What else have we got? Wednesday is probably a big one. EU zone inflation data on Wednesday. It's the 1st of October next month. Okay, next week. So Wednesday's a big one, inflation data. So I'm guessing that means we've got the payrolls on Friday. So have a look. There we go. So next Friday is the non-farm payrolls. So that'd be a big one. Expectation is, what's that, for 39,000 jobs to have been added. So let's see, because they got massively revised, didn't they? Was it a couple of weeks ago? They had that massive revision to months and months worth of payrolls. So I think that's Wednesday EU inflation next week and Friday non-farm payrolls. Let's see how it goes. But I should be here next Friday after the payrolls have come out. Okay, let's take a look at it. So let's start off with US stock markets as per. Let's just tidy this up a bit. So this is the S&P. So we did, we have had a fresh all-time high this week. So for me, the market is still positive. That's the reason I bought the Nasdaq earlier this week. I was buying the dip in the Nasdaq. The market sort of rolled over since Tuesday afternoon. So when was that? 3 days ago. But for me, when it comes to US stock markets, in the very short term at least, we have those lows from a week last Wednesday, the US interest rate decision lows from a week last Wednesday. And that's for me, that's an important line in the sand. Yeah, we saw the market sort of think, oh, this isn't very good. Then we saw it recover, and then we saw fresh all-time highs hit. So for me, 65.50 on the S&P is the line in the sand. If we were looking at the Nasdaq, there it is, rounded up a bit, 24,000 or thereabouts on the Nasdaq. So I suppose, if I was, I'm in the trade already. If I was taking the view that the correction we've had over the last couple of days is over, we're going to see a bit of a recovery today and a push higher next week. If I was a buyer now at 24,460, the closest I'd want my stop is at least the other side of yesterday's low, which is 24,180. So it's 280 points away from where we are now. But it was a volatile day yesterday. And then if I was giving everything a bit more wiggle room, I would go for, if I was going for a bigger swing, perhaps based off the daily chart, then I'd be using that Wednesday low, down at 24. And it's been pretty volatile since Wednesday. The market moved 800 points since a week last Wednesday, the range. So it's a big range, and in big ranges, we need to give the market time to prove us right. So let's see. So I'm quite interested to see where it all finishes up today. I'm long. I'm hoping for the bounce. If I was taking a view today, and I wanted to go short, what was yesterday's high? Yesterday's high was, are we through yesterday's high? We are, aren't we? So we're through yesterday's in-session high, which is 24,460. Let's see how it all ends up today. But yeah, a bit of a funny week for me. So that's the US, positive overall. We've had 2 or 3 days of the market selling off. 2 or 3 days does not change a big trend. Well, it's just a fact, isn't it? Yeah, so that's that. What's the Dow doing? Oh, the Dow has come off a bit as well. The DAX has been such a funny old market in recent months. We did have, this is the German index, we did have an all-time high, fresh all-time high in July. So what's that? It's more than 2.5 months ago now, and it's just been sideways since then. The DAX, and here we are. What do you do? I mean, that's September in the DAX. I mean, looking at that, if we had a bit more strength from here, I'd be looking to sell the strength, because we've got 23,900 or thereabouts has been a ceiling for the DAX. So not too much exciting to talk about there. FTSE, I'm in the trade in the FTSE. I bought it, like I said, 92.30, just to see, is it going to have another push back up to the all-time highs? Again, like the DAX, it's not been the most exciting couple of weeks in the FTSE. Let's hope. I'm hoping it gets a bit of a move on from today and into next week. Let's see. Not much happening there. I should have bought the Spanish this week. I do like the old Spanish index, the IBEX. So the Spanish has had a bit of a move today. I've done a few trades on the Spain 35 over recent months. Nice trend and a big old move today in the Spanish index. So interesting to see next week if the old highs in the Espanol 35 get taken out, about 120 points higher than where we are now. But there's been, as I say, it's been a nice look at that trend going back over the years. An interesting market, the old Spain, and I haven't traded that much before the last couple of months, but there's been some nice moves there. An interesting one for next week to see if these European markets get some momentum back. Japan recently hit fresh all-time highs. There we go, Japan. A week yesterday hit fresh all-time highs. The trend is up from whenever that is, April of this year. What's the Italian market look like? Italian market, a bit like the Spanish. Okay, so for me, European markets are still need to get a bit of a move on. US markets is still very much my focus. Let's see where it all ends up today. What else should we talk about? Gold. I mean, gold hit a fresh all-time high this week. I must admit, I came in on Monday morning, and gold was up a lot already on Monday. So I was looking at it mid-morning, and it was trading around 37.20, and that was after finishing end of last week about 36.80. And I was scrabbling around trying to find a reason why we'd seen this big start to gold at the beginning of the week, and apparently it was down to expectations about rate cuts, more aggressive rate cuts in the States. But I think earlier this week, Mr. Powell, the head of the Fed, has perhaps dampened down expectations about that. But I still buy the dip in gold. Obviously, if I was a buyer now, I would want my stop the other side of 3,700. 3,700 was a recent all-time high from earlier in September. So I think I'd want my stop above there. But I would absolutely still be a buyer of the dip in gold. Silver, same. Not all-time highs in silver, but another decade-plus high in silver. Where are we going back to on silver? So we're above 45 now. So best levels since 2011. So 14-year highs in silver. It's been a good trend, that silver. It's really, really woken up, particularly in September. Where did it come into? Where was it? Hang on, what's this? An hourly chart. So where was it at the end of August? End of August, it was around $39, and now it's 45. So it's moved $6. So we've had a 15% move in silver this month. Big old move, isn't it? And still going strong. So again, I'd be a buyer of silver. The only question is, do I buy the dip or do I just pile in? I'd want my stop at the very least below the lows from earlier this week, Monday afternoon lows, $43.30. But a great trend there. I think the question mark for silver, and I think it is a big one. We had these old highs from 2011 up at 50, give or take a few cents, $50 an ounce was the old all-time high. Not all-time, I don't know if it's an all-time high, but a major high for silver ahead of 50. So I think it's whether, there's the conviction as we get, assuming we do get closer and closer to $50 an ounce, do we see the profit taking and some nerves coming back? So it'll be interesting. I think an interesting end of the year for silver to see what happens in the months ahead. But strong for now. I'd buy the dip, and it's just about figuring out where does my stop go. So you have a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been a bit boring as well. I suppose I'd be assuming it doesn't take out yesterday's low of around 108,000. There's an argument to be a buyer of Bitcoin, I think, isn't there? I mean, the big trend is up, obviously, on Bitcoin as well. If I was a buyer now, the closest I'd want my stop is the other side of 107. In reality, I'd want it further away than that, because Bitcoin, as we know, is a volatile market. I would probably still want it the other side of 100,000, which is only a 10% or so stop. But not the most exciting month really for Bitcoin, but overall, absolutely, that trend is still up. So, and there's lots of markets at the moment that I look at and I think they're not that exciting. There's not the trends. Dollar index is a great example. So this is the dollar against a basket of different currencies, and it's trading today where it was in June. So we've had 3 months of noise effectively and no real direction for the dollar index. And of course, if the dollar is going sideways, then that impacts plenty of other markets, pound against the dollar, euro dollar, all that sort of stuff. I did put in the WhatsApp group this morning, I wondered if it was a sell up here. If I had to do anything on the US dollar, would I be a seller? Because this 98.80 sort of area has been something of a ceiling for the price over the last month or so. But it's just a bit directionless, isn't it? Well, it is for me anyway. So nothing too exciting there for me. And I'm going to say the same about oil. If you look at oil, again, quite a bit of volatility over the last 6 weeks or so. From 62 to 66.5 dollars a barrel, but no real direction. it's strong at the moment. You know, it's been strong for well, all this week. We've seen a good move this week, off these old lows. You know, 62 for US crude does seem to be something of a floor for the price of oil at the moment. And then when it gets up to sort of 66, 67, it runs out of steam again. Let's see what next week brings. You know, do we get the breakout? But again, I think I did mention that in the WhatsApp group when it was down near 62. But for me, because the trend was sideways, I wasn't really that interested, and it did turn around a bit quickly. So it's all a bit meandery there as well. Natural gas, never my most favourite market. But we've got these conflicting trends in natural gas. We've got the trend down since March of this year, and we've got the trend up since March of last year. So pick a side, you know. I don't know. Again, for me on natural gas, there's not a lot jumping out for me and the price of natural gas. Actually, let's do copper. Let's have a look at copper, because there was a big move in copper. Was it yesterday or the day before? Let's take a look at that. There was a major incident. I think was it a mudslide or something? Where is copper on my chart? Have I deleted it? There was a mudslide, there we go, at an Indonesian mine belonging to Freeport. So we saw which the company said, I think it's going to affect production. So we did see quite the strong rally in copper. When was that? From Wednesday, from about 455 to yesterday 486. So, you know, a decent move in copper. It's giving it back. But you know, overall, we had this massive sell-off. I think it was the biggest one-day move in copper back at the end of July, when the US slapped tariffs on copper, and we saw the price basically crash 20%. It's been trying to build its way back up since then. Had that big move yesterday. I think it's an interesting one for next week. You know, if you look at the trend since the big sell-off in copper, it is trying to recover. You know, so I think if we saw copper back down around $4.55, $4.50 next week, I think it's interesting, you know, to see if the buyers come back out. But hopefully you can see it's, you know, there's not, you know, with the exception of US stock markets and gold and silver, there's not much in the way of really clear trends, I feel, at the moment. Anyway, this is pound against the dollar. There we go, you know, and because of course we've got a sideways US dollar, then markets quoted against the dollar, with the exception of gold and silver, are pretty sideways as well. You know, so there's the pound, which is trading around about 134 to the US dollar, which is where it was in May, 4 months ago. You know, I think there's an argument for being a buyer, because we're near the bottom of we are at the bottom of the range, the lows from whenever that was, beginning in September, and we've seen a bit of a bounce, a 50-cent bounce off those lows, you know, but it is, again, it's all a bit sideways. Look at euro dollar, I'm guessing it's the same, isn't it? Dollar yen, that did have a bit of a run. Dollar yen, yeah, that's broken out of that, but again, if you looked at the last couple of months, all a bit sideways overall. So yeah, a bit of a quieter time, I think, in markets. But you know, even if you just focus on US stock markets, I think there's still enough going on. You know, there's enough going on for me, anyway, in US and European markets, but not the most interesting at times. So that's it, really. But what I'm going to do now, if there's any stuff you want looking at, if you put it in the chat, what was interesting this week? Intel. Let's have a quick look at those. I thought that was quite an interesting move in Intel, off the back of Nvidia. Was it Nvidia invested $5 billion in Intel, I think, didn't they? And there was a rumor that Intel were also talking to Apple about an investment as well. So they have. You know what? I would have gone short those yesterday. I'd have been stopped yesterday. But I mean, they've had a big old move. They've nearly doubled now since the August lows, Intel. So it's quite interesting to see how sustainable that ends up being. Because again, with Intel overall, the trend has been down for 4 years. So that was interesting. On car news, Porsche, poor old Porsche, got kicked out of the DAX, I think. The old Porsche share price has been clobbered, gone from 120 euros a share in May 23 to 40 euros a share this year. I mean, clearly, you know, with the transitions to electric vehicles is providing plenty of challenges in the traditional car space. I do wonder, there's been quite a bit of bad news circulating about Porsche in recent weeks, but the share price isn't going any lower. So I wonder, it's early days, but I wonder, are we getting to the stage where all the bad news is factored in the price and perhaps it's a bit of a recovery play? I don't know. There's plenty, the big trend is down. But as I am a bit of a car geek, I do like to have a look at some of these car stocks and see how they're doing. And it has not been a good time for Porsche. So let's look at Ferrari, because they were doing well for a while. Yeah, I mean, they've bucked that trend a bit. And they did hit a fresh all-time high briefly in July. But yeah, interesting what's going on in the wider world. So if there's anything you want looking at, let me know. I'll talk about the WhatsApp group. I'll skip through all that, talk about that last week. But I do a WhatsApp group. I've run it for 2.5 years now. I do a daily update in the morning. Markets I think are interesting. Trades I've got running. Moving my stop losses, all of that sort of stuff. And a Q&A. If anyone's got any questions, they can fire them in. If you sign up, you want to try it for a month. If you sign up using the code YouTube, you get 20% off the first month. So you can try it for a month and see if you find it useful. Most people stay in there for, on average, I think it's about 8 months. So they do find it useful, which is good. And I enjoy doing it. And I do it twice a day, the WhatsApp group. So the link is down below if you want to try that. A recent webinar I did on day trading indices. I do a webinar every month. You'll get access to the last 2 previous webinars and the next live webinar. And that's it. If you want to find out who I trade with, go to bit.ly/DavidTrade. And I'm always happy to answer any questions. Just drop me an email, dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. And all of these links and stuff are in the description to this video. So it's been a bit of a strange old week. I'm quite, for me, I'm quite interested to see where it all finishes this afternoon. Do we get, a bit of a recovery in these US stock markets? NASDAQ, the S&P is looking strong-ish. Do we get a recovery in these US markets after the last 2 or 3 days of sliding markets? But otherwise, if there are no questions, I think we're all done. So I'm going to wrap it up for the week. I'll be back next week on Friday after the payrolls. We'll see where everything is then. Any questions, you can always get in touch. Otherwise, until then, good luck with your trading, and let's see where we are this time next week.